So what is it like living in an RV? In this video, we're going to explain to you about our experience and expose some of the myths around this lifestyle. Stay tuned.
Hey everyone, we're Josh and Liz from Peanuts Pretzels Travel, and we're here to make travel planning fun and easy for people just like you.
So the RV lifestyle has really taken off in the last few years, and as more and more people are, calling off their big trips and wanting to do more things outside and closer to home, the RV industry is just going to continue to grow. And there's a number of people who are even considering moving into their RVs. We have actually been living in our RV full-time.
For a full year.
Yeah, for a full year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But we were a little bit different story than some people.
For sure.
We have actually downsized and sold it all a couple times.
Twice.
In our lives, our adult lives.
We sold it all for backpacks the first time to travel around and live in Asia for a few years. Sold it all the second time to hop into the RV and travel around the US and live our best life.
Exactly. We had experience sort of living nomadically and traveling around and living in tight spaces and working together and things like that. We really love this lifestyle. We've met some amazing people and made some really good friends. We've seen some incredible places, but one of the things we've realized is that there's a lot of information out there, and some of it paints a really rosy picture and glorifies the great parts of it.
It's not all roses and peach cobbler or
yeah, it's not all sunsets and rainbows, that is for sure. We just want to make sure that for anyone who is thinking of getting into this lifestyle, that you have the real experience from people who have done it and kind of telling you the great parts and maybe the not so great parts and the things maybe you didn't even think about, because it's not for everyone, and that's for sure, and that's okay. In this video, we're going to share with you what we've learned and dispel some of those myths and misconceptions. So let's get into it. So one of the first misconceptions that people might think of when it comes to the RV lifestyle is they think that they can go anywhere, stay anywhere, and stay as long as they want.
No, it's definitely not true. We would still be in the redwoods if that was the case.
I know, right? It just doesn't work that way because there's, first of all, private land. Most of the land here in the States is owned by someone, and cities have ordinances against this. And you can't just pull up and decide that you're going to camp in someone's parking lot for an extended period of time, especially. Now, Walmart's pretty famous for having sort of a policy where RVers can stop over and spend the night if they're driving through, but again, some cities don't allow that. Then there's also, public lands. You're going to want to find some type of BLM lands. We'll put some links below to some websites you can use, but for the most part, you can't just go drive out and park somewhere and set up shop and camp. Someone owns that piece of land, and even if you find BLM land, a lot of times, even if it's free or if it costs a small fee, they sometimes have restrictions for how long you can stay. Maybe it's like 14 days or something like that.
And they usually don't have hookups, electricity, sewer, things like that you will find out quickly you need to make life comfortable while living in your RV full time. Exactly.
Another thing to think about when it comes to BLM land and finding those open spaces to go boondocking, like we like to say, the East Coast of the United States, it's a lot harder to find that type of land.
As you go out west and there's more land and there's more openness to it, you can find it a little bit easier than the East Coast. It is
a lot easier on the West Coast, or if you're in the Rocky Mountains and things, Arizona, Colorado, places like that, you'll find more options. But on the East Coast, it's going to be really difficult.
So the next major misconception about full-time RV living is that it's cheap.
Yeah, that it's a cheap lifestyle.
That it's a cheap lifestyle. I know that a lot of people who are not familiar with RV living and RV lifestyle think of Cousin Eddie.
Oh, that's an RV.
I know some of my family members out there thought I was turning into a Cousin Eddie. It's definitely not a cheap lifestyle, but it can be cheap. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, it really comes down to your personal preferences and the type of lifestyle you want to have. There are some people who have rigs that are $500,000. Some of them are more expensive than people's houses, and so those folks might be staying in
a
nicer...
lot of them are nicer than some people's houses. The RVers out there know.
It's kind of, it really depends. If that's the kind of lifestyle you want, and you want that type of a nice rig, and you might be staying in nicer RV parks, your expenses are going to be a lot higher. You know, some RV parks can cost a couple $1,000s a month.
RV campgrounds are a lot like hotels. So some of them can be extremely cheap. Some of them can be free, like the BLM land that you were talking about earlier. So that saves a lot of money on your monthly expenses.
After a year on the road, I'd say the average price for like a decent RV park, what would you say, around $40 a night? Most of them were around $50.
That's a good 40, 50.
40, 50 for a pretty good RV park. Sometimes you can get them a little cheaper. Even if you're staying at state parks, you might be talking like 25 bucks a night at some of them. So even if it was 40 bucks a night and you did it for like 30 nights, about a month, that's 1,200 bucks. It depends if it's a cheap lifestyle. It really depends on your personal preferences.
So the more you're moving around, the more it can actually cost you. If you're staying put somewhere for a month or 2 months at a time, that's where you can get cost breaks. But if you're going for 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 1 week here, then you're gonna be paying top dollar pretty much.
And there are some different like clubs you can belong to, like Thousand Trails or Passport America. But from our experience and looking at those, they actually take a lot more planning because you have to buy in at certain rates and there's only certain places you can go. You have to know how to work the system and you have to know how to plan it out, which to us was just way too much work. But we know some people who can get some pretty good places to stay. But if you don't do it right, you know, you're still gonna end up paying out the nose anyway. Also, when it comes to an RV, I don't know if you know this, but anytime something breaks on an RV, everything on an RV is stupid expensive. Maintenance, taking care of your RV, you know, let's dispel that myth right now. RVing is not a cheap lifestyle.
So that's why you need your handy tools and your handyman RV kit. Always gonna need that. You're always gonna be doing something, tinkering with something, you know, because you can't necessarily call someone if you're out boondocking or even at a resort.
So another myth about living in an RV is that you have the ultimate freedom to go wherever, whenever you want.
This is a double-edged sword.
That's very true. Because it is possible to a certain extent. You know, we've definitely, you know, flown by the seat of our pants in some places that we've gone. We've decided to stay longer or, you know, change our plan and whatnot. And if you're out west and there's more boondocking options that you can explore very easily.
It's easier to go place to place to place that way.
You can be a lot more flexible that way. But one of the big things that we've learned after a year on the road is that you have to plan way more than we realized. And you have to book reservations at a lot of places in advance. So even state and national parks.
Yeah, you gotta book months in advance, especially the popular state parks and things like that. I know Colorado, I mean, summertime Colorado is completely booked.
I can tell
all
you,
the time.
We were in Denver and I was trying to find places to stay just for a weekend in our RV. And I basically tried the entire summer and could not find a single weekend open anywhere in any of the state parks near Denver, Colorado.
And we were in Navarre Beach during the lockdown and everything like that, and we were lucky that we got to even stay there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I think we found someone's cancellation or something, but I know some of the people that were there, they go there every single year, but they're 18 months out from booking.
Yeah,
so like
they have a waiting list of like 60 to 80 people, and you have to book at least a year in advance. And we've
That's crazy. Do you know what you're doing in 18 months from now?
We were talking to a lot of people we've been in Florida as we've been in Florida this year. And if you're planning on coming to like peak RV parks, peak destinations like Florida during the winter, the consensus is that you really have to book it a year in advance. You know, we had this experience last time when we were backpacking in Asia. We always had to plan the next place and we had to plan in advance so we had somewhere to stay and somewhere to go. We've kind of found that living in an RV is like that. You know, anytime it went like a few months out and we didn't have a place booked, we would start to get worried about it and start to do some research because it can be difficult to find.
We would book for like a whole month and be like, okay, good, now we know where we're going after this place and after this place. And then a few weeks comes around and it's like you're doing the same thing again. You got to spend a half a day planning and where do we want to go? I don't know, where do you want to go? So
and then contacting RV parks. And unfortunately, a lot of RV parks don't have great online booking systems. so you have to
Yeah.
call them. And that's a real pain when you're looking at different cities and different campgrounds and trying to figure out where to go to actually get on the phone with these people, because they also don't always answer the phone and you have to wait for callbacks. I can't tell you how many times we never got called back.
Yeah.
From people. And even sending emails, they don't respond to those. So it can be frustrating when you're trying to find places to stay.
When we first started off, it was like week here, a week there, but even less than that, like 2 days here, 2 days there. Like by the time you get unloaded and kind of made comfortable, you got to pack it up again and hit the road. It becomes exhausting if you're doing it full time.
Exactly.
And so then we went on to 2 weeks, and then that was great. We could actually get a feel for the place for every 2 weeks. And then once we really started doing a month here and a month there, like that's when we could really start relaxing and start living.
We found that the month was the sweet spot, I think, or even a couple months, because we're just tired of moving around. So yeah.
And planning.
Keep that in mind. It's nice to have this freedom, and it's great, but it's also a double-edged sword because it causes for a lot of stress and a lot of planning, and sometimes it just gets kind of old and frustrating, and you end up just booking a place and staying there for an extended period of time, which is fun, but it's also not necessarily the reason we went on the road.
Yeah.
You know, to stay in the same place. So the next myth we want to talk about is what we hear a lot, and a lot of the reasons that people get into RV life is that it's going to be a simpler life. This is true to a certain extent, less stuff, minimalistic. You know, we love that we don't have that many things in the RV to take care of. We don't have much clutter, things to deal with.
Takes 10 minutes to clean.
Yeah, that's nice. It takes like 30 minutes if I like do a deep clean, which is amazing. However, I definitely would not say it is a simpler life. You know, at your house, when you had to use the bathroom and you went to that toilet, you didn't have to think about where the water was coming from or where the stuff was going.
Shitter was full!
You plug in your computer or your TV and it just works at your house. You have to think about every single piece of your infrastructure all the time. You have to think about, do I have enough water in my tanks? If dirty water, you can't just dump your dirty water. Your toilet water, you can't just dump that. Your black tanks, as we call it. Electricity, generators, some people like solar. You know, so these are things you have to think about that a lot of us who live in our homes, we don't realize. For example, if you have a clog in your RV and you're out boondocking in the mountains, you're not gonna be able to call a plumber just to come over and fix it. Guess who's gonna be getting in there and fixing it?
This is why you need
gonna be you.
RV toolkit ASAP. That's the first thing you should invest into once after you get your RV.
You're gonna have to be doing a lot of that stuff yourself. You also have to keep in mind routes that you're taking when you're driving places. You don't wanna take the wrong road and like hit a low bridge or something. It's not just driving your RV, it could be parking or trying to get groceries or gas. You know, we always have to sort of plan which gas stations we're gonna go to.
Yeah, you can't just whip into any gas station and get gas.
Yeah, you have to, like we'll drive by some places and think, oh, maybe that's gonna be a tight fit, or maybe we can get in, but we can't turn around and get back out, you know?
Patience, you need patience when you're RVing.
There's a lot of planning and thinking when you're driving a big rig like that. The other thing to think about are if you have pets with you. We know a lot of people that travel with pets. We obviously do. She's right here with us. And you can't take pets everywhere, unfortunately. Now, most RV parks I feel like are becoming more dog friendly, but not all of them. We've definitely run across some that do not allow pets. We've ran across a number that actually have breed restrictions, yeah. So we're lucky, Hannah's a Labrador. She's welcome everywhere. Also, if you're just gonna go to some state parks or national parks, you can't take your pet in all national parks. They have like different restrictions and stuff. So you need to look that up in advance, because if it's hot, you don't want to have to like leave your dog in the car or the hot RV or
so
something like that.
So if you're going to national parks, you definitely, with your pets, you definitely have to plan on it. We have some links below to kind of help you decide which best national park for you. You
know, we could kind of go on and on about this, but I think that it's a different lifestyle. It's something to get used to, and I wouldn't say just overall that it's simple, because there's actually a lot of things to think about. It's not just gonna be, you know, you taking off and parking on a river somewhere and living out the rest of your days. So a lot of people now are working remote and working from their RVs like we do.
We do.
And the next myth that people have is, tell them, Josh.
Is, oh, it's cool, I'll just go use the Wi-Fi at the campground.
Yeah.
What?
At the RV park.
That doesn't work. That's a huge myth. Some of them are great, but are you going to be able to do work, especially now everyone's using Zoom and doing FaceTime and things like that? No.
Every day when we were at Navarre Beach, we had people come out of their RVs asking us how we weren't going crazy with their internet, because a lot of people were from
like, I don't even know, I don't use their internet.
Yeah,
I have my own.
a lot of people, due to COVID and everything, were working from home, and they decided to go to their RVs and work, and they kind of like, hey, I'm gonna go down to the beach in Florida if I have to be home, right? And they were all pulling their hair out because they couldn't do any work. They were complaining to us they were getting kicked off of Zoom calls and all these things, and it was because they were trying to use the RV park's internet. More and more RV parks are investing in good Wi-Fi, but they just can't support the needs of all these RVers if they were trying to do video calls and streaming and stuff like that. It's just not gonna work. So even though they might be advertising it, it doesn't mean that it's gonna be working for you very well. So if it's a part of your job, you just cannot depend on it.
Liz did a great video recently on RV Wi-Fi. Make sure you watch it in the links below. So yeah, that's one huge myth.
So we bring our own network.
Yeah, you got to bring your own network with you, especially if you're working from the road or anything like that. We actually, another kind of tip, we all have different cell phone services. Yeah. So if T-Mobile's working good in one area, then AT&T's not, Verizon, we have it all covered.
Yeah, we have all three of those networks between our different hotspot devices and our cell phones. So we're covered in most places, but there's even some times when we're out boondocking up in the mountains and maybe we don't get that great a cell signal. Yeah. There's places that I would love to go camping in Colorado. My favorite place to camp is like down a ravine or canyon, like next to the river, and that would be amazing. But I guarantee you we would get crap internet. If you're depending on internet, then the places you go and stay, you know, you might have to check and make sure that there's good cell signal so it works. So the next myth about living in an RV, and we hear this a lot when we talk to people and we tell them that we live in our RV and that we're full-time here at the RV parks.
It's like vacationing all the time.
Yeah, that's really not exactly true. I mean, if you're retired, perhaps you have more free time, but you know, we actually have full-time jobs. We work remote. We've worked remote for years for our own company, and you know, there's times, I don't know if you remember when you were a kid, but maybe you sat in your house and you had homework to do, but you could look out the window and see all the kids playing and having fun, and you were just super jealous and it made you feel bad. That's kind of what it can feel like sometimes. And so it's really hard if you're not disciplined and you don't know how to work from home, but you're gonna be tempted. You're gonna be surrounded with people that are having fun, and you might not always get to participate on that fun.
So when we took 2 weeks and we were down in Siesta Key, it was tropical vacation, but we had to spend about several days, about 8-10 hours inside working just to finish projects and things like that. Yeah. Whereas everyone was out enjoying the beach, having drinks by the pool.
So even though
things like that.
We were there for 2 weeks,
we'd see a person walking with kayaks and be like, oh, kayaks would be really nice right now.
But I have to finish this project first, you know? So even though we were there for a couple weeks, we only got to spend a couple days really hanging out and having fun. And we tried to be flexible with our schedules so that we can maybe work in the morning and go have fun in the afternoon, you know, but that takes coordination, and you have to have a bit of a flexible job to be able to do that, which we're lucky we can do. But some people, if they're working a very strict like 9-to-5 job, they might not have the ability to change their hours and their schedule, so it's going to be really challenging. And even more so if you have a spouse that has a different schedule, or you have kids that are really excited and want to run around and go do fun stuff, it's going to be a challenge for you to coordinate all of that because you're not always on vacation. And it's just kind of a different experience, I think, when you're staying in an RV park and you're not on vacation, you're living. You know, you have to do the boring stuff.
You see the vacationers coming in and leaving.
Yeah, but that's not you. You know, you have to work. You have to go run errands. You have to go to the post office. You know, you have to go get the car fixed, the brakes, whatever. You know, so it's just like living normal life, but you're in this different sort of place. So, you know, there's pros and cons to that. You do get to stay there longer, but it doesn't mean you're always getting to have fun.
When you do have those little breaks, it's nice. You're in a place where I can take an hour and go to the beach and come back and go to work.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. You know, at the end of the day, when we were in the Keys, we finished a hard day's work, we were able to go out and enjoy the sunset party.
Yes.
And have drinks and look out over the water and that was pretty amazing. You know, not everyone can say that, and so that was a really special part. And so there's pros and cons.
Pros and cons for sure,
as there is with anything. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on the subject. If you are living in an RV, or you have lived in an RV, or if you want to, please include your input and comments and feedback in the section below. And make sure to check out some of our links that we referred to for our blog. And lastly, you know, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you on the next video. Keep watching. Bye.
Bye. RV living. That's what we do.